60 seconds. That's all it took to reduce his entire career to ashes. One click, one hidden hyperlink, and the $100,000 presentation became his professional obituary. I sat in the back of that conference room, watching the horror unfold on the investors' faces, feeling nothing but the cold satisfaction of justice served. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. They're wrong. It's best served at exactly 10:47 a.m. in front of the entire C-suite with perfect video quality. My name is Lauren Voss, and I'm the woman who destroyed my boss with a single mouse click. I'm sitting here now, 3 weeks after the incident, in my new corner office at Meridian Technologies, Trilithion's biggest competitor. The irony isn't lost on me. The view from the 23rd floor overlooks downtown Raleigh, including the building where I spent 4 years of my life being systematically undermined, overlooked, and stolen from. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that morning. October 15th, 10:45 a.m. Conference room. A. Trilithion Systems headquarters. The air conditioning was set too high, as always, making the room feel like a corporate morgue. Fitting, considering what was about to happen. Gavin Drayton stood at the front of the room, his $1,000 suit impeccable, his practiced smile radiating the kind of confidence that only comes from taking credit for other people's work. The PowerPoint glowed behind him, my PowerPoint, my research, my strategies. My sleepless nights condensed into 32 slides with his name plastered across them. The audience was impressive: CEO Margaret Chen, CFO David Kowalski, and 3 representatives from Venture North, the investment firm we were courting for a critical round of funding. $100,000 rode on this presentation. For Gavin, it meant a promotion to senior vice president. For me, it meant watching 9 months of my life being performed by a man who couldn't even pronounce scalability metrics correctly 6 months ago. I sat in the back row, invisible, as always. Just another mid-level strategist in a sea of suits. My laptop was open, ostensibly for note-taking. In reality, I was counting down the minutes. Slide 14. That's where I'd placed it. Right in the middle of his grand vision for the company's future, a section titled Future Outlook that he'd stolen wholesale from my Project Nova Reach proposal. As you can see, Gavin's voice boomed with false authority. Our projections for Q3 and Q4 show unprecedented growth potential. Click. Slide 12. The Asian markets alone represent a 40% increase in revenue streams. Click. Slide 13. My heart rate stayed steady at 72 beats per minute. I'd been monitoring it on my fitness tracker. After months of planning, I'd trained myself to feel nothing in this moment. No anxiety, no doubt, just cold, calculated patience. And now, Gavin announced with a theatrical pause, "Let me show you the future of Trilithion Systems." Click. The screen flickered for a fraction of a second, so brief that most people would attribute it to a technical glitch. Then the video began. Gavin's face, red and sweating from too much bourbon at last year's Christmas party. His voice, slurred but unmistakable. Margaret Chen is a fucking dinosaur who wouldn't know innovation if it bit her on her frozen ass. The conference room became a vacuum. All oxygen seemed to disappear. The video continued, Gavin at his desk, unaware of the laptop camera recording. These venture capital idiots will throw money at anything with AI in the pitch. Watch me milk these suckers dry. Cut to Gavin in the parking garage, on a call he thought was private. Yeah, I've got this analyst, Lauren something, does all the work, asks no questions. It's like having a Harvard MBA for the price of community college. 53 seconds of career suicide, compiled from recordings I'd gathered over months of systematic documentation. 7 more seconds of Gavin berating the cleaning staff, using language that would make HR spontaneously combust. 60 seconds total. The video ended. The PowerPoint remained frozen on a black screen. In the reflection, I could see Gavin's face cycling through confusion, recognition, and finally, pure terror. Margaret Chen stood up slowly, her face a mask of controlled fury. David Kowalski was already typing furiously on his phone, probably alerting legal. The Venture North representatives exchanged glances that said everything. Not only was the deal dead, but Trilithion had just become uninvestable. This isn't. Gavin stammered, clicking frantically at his presenter remote as if he could somehow undo the last minute of his life. Mr. Drayton. Margaret's voice could have frozen hell. Please remain where you are. Security is on their way. I closed my laptop quietly, picked up my coffee, still warm, and headed for the door. As I passed Gavin, our eyes met for just a moment. In that instant, I saw the question forming in his mind. How? But he'd never get to ask it. By the time security escorted him out 12 minutes later, I was already at my desk, updating my resignation letter. By the time IT discovered the embedded video link an hour later, I was having lunch at the cafe across the street, watching the Trilithion building like it was the final scene of a movie I'd directed. They say success is the best revenge. They're wrong about that too. The best revenge is watching someone destroy themselves with their own weapon while you're already walking toward your next chapter. 9 months before I clicked that hyperlink, I was a different person. Naive, maybe. Definitely more optimistic. I believed that hard work and talent would eventually be recognized. That the corporate ladder was climbable if you just put in the effort. God, I was stupid. I'd joined Trilithion Systems 4 years earlier, fresh from my MBA at Duke, ready to revolutionize the tech consulting world. The first 2 years were typical entry-level grunt work, spreadsheets, coffee runs, sitting through meetings where my only contribution was taking notes nobody would ever read. But I was patient. I was building my foundation. By year 3, I'd found my groove in the strategic development division. My analyses were sharp, my presentations were cleaner than anyone else's, and I had a knack for spotting market trends before they became obvious. That's when Gavin Drayton entered my life. He transferred in from the Chicago office with a reputation that preceded him, a rainmaker, they called him, someone who could close deals and charm clients. What they didn't mention was that he was also a master at what I now call corporate vampirism, sucking the lifeblood out of his team while basking in the glory. At first, Gavin seemed like the mentor I'd been looking for. He was 41, silver at the temples, with that kind of effortless charisma that made C-suite executives lean in when he talked. He took me under his wing, or so I thought. Lauren, he'd say, perching on the edge of my desk like we were old friends, you've got real potential. Stick with me, and I'll make sure the right people notice. The warning signs were there from the beginning, but I was too eager to see them. The way he'd ask me to just take a quick look at his presentations, which turned into complete rewrites. How he'd request my input on strategies, then present them verbatim in meetings I wasn't invited to. The casual way he'd drop comments like, "No need to mention you helped with this. Too many cooks, you know." The office culture at Trilithon made it easy for him. It was a boys' club disguised as a meritocracy. In meeting after meeting, I watched my ideas get credited to whatever man repeated them louder. I started keeping a journal, initially just to track my contributions, but it quickly became a record of systematic erasure. January 15th, presented competitive analysis on emerging markets. Gavin summarized my findings in the partner meeting, received credit for comprehensive research. February 3rd, developed algorithm for optimizing client acquisition costs. Gavin showed it to the board, now being implemented company-wide as the Drayton Method. March 22nd, worked 60 hours on the Peterson Industries pitch, wasn't included in the presentation team. Gavin closed the deal using my entire deck. But it wasn't just the theft that wore me down, it was the gaslighting. When I tried to assert myself, Gavin would pull me aside with that concerned expression he'd perfected. "Lauren, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you need to be more of a team player. It's not about individual recognition. It's about what's best for Trilithon." Meanwhile, his name was on every win, every innovation, every breakthrough that came from our department. The other women in the office knew. We had our whisper networks, our careful conversations by the coffee machine. Sarah from accounting told me how Gavin had done the same thing to his previous analyst, who'd quit after a nervous breakdown. Monica from HR, who couldn't officially say anything, made sure I knew about the company's robust documentation policies and how email chains can be very useful for performance reviews. So I started documenting everything, every email saved in multiple folders, every verbal instruction followed up with a just to confirm message. I installed call recording software on my phone, legal in North Carolina as long as one party consents. I became a digital pack rat, hoarding evidence of my own existence in the corporate machine. The men in the office didn't see it. To them, Gavin was a success story, someone to emulate. They laughed at his jokes in the break room, invited him to their golf games, and never questioned why his team had such high turnover. After all, he delivered results. Nobody asked how. By month 6 of working under Gavin, I'd developed a constant tension headache and a Xanax prescription I never filled. I'd lie awake at night, replaying conversations, wondering if I was being too sensitive, too ambitious, too much. Classic gaslight symptoms, my therapist would later tell me. But I didn't quit. Couldn't quit. I had student loans, rent on a decent apartment in North Hills, and most importantly, I had pride. I wasn't going to be another woman driven out of tech by some mediocre man in an expensive suit. Instead, I got smarter. I learned Gavin's patterns, his weaknesses. He was sloppy when he drank, which was often. He trusted technology he didn't understand, giving me access to systems I shouldn't have had. He was arrogant enough to believe that I'd always be his invisible assistant, too grateful for his mentorship to ever be a threat. That was his first mistake. Underestimating me was his second. But his biggest mistake, he forgot that the person who builds the weapon knows exactly where to aim it. Project Nova Reach was supposed to be my breakthrough. 3 months of 16-hour days, weekends lost to market analysis, and enough caffeine to kill a horse. I'd identified an untapped niche in the Southeast Asian enterprise market that could net Trillathon a projected $40 million in revenue over 2 years. This wasn't just another pitch deck. This was my ticket to senior analyst, maybe even assistant director. I'd kept Gavin in the loop, professionally, sending him weekly updates that he'd acknowledge with his typical, "Keep up the good work, Lauren." But I was careful this time. The real meat of the project, the financial models, the client acquisition strategy, the implementation timeline, I kept on my personal drive, password protected and backed up in 3 locations. The Venture North meeting was scheduled for October 15th, a $100,000 investment decision that would fund our expansion into new markets. I'd been preparing for this moment since July, refining every slide, anticipating every question. Gavin had promised I'd be part of the presentation team. "This is your baby, Lauren. Of course you'll be there to see it through." October 8th, 1 week before the meeting, Gavin called me into his office at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday. He had that look, the one I'd learned meant bad news wrapped in corporate speak. "Lauren, I've been thinking about the Venture North presentation," he started, leaning back in his leather chair. "You've done exceptional work on Nova Reach, truly exceptional." I knew what was coming before he said it. "But I think it's best if I handle the presentation solo. These VC types can be particular about who they deal with. They expect a certain level of seniority. You understand? But don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows your contribution." The words hit me like physical blows, but I kept my face neutral. 4 years of practice had taught me that showing emotion in these moments only gave them ammunition. "I understand," I said, my voice steady. "Should I prepare any additional materials for you?" His relief was palpable. "That's the spirit. Just send me the final deck by Monday. Oh, and the financial models. Better include those too. You know how detail-oriented these investors can be." I sent him everything Monday morning, the complete presentation, the models, even my speaking notes. Then I watched from my desk as he practiced my words in the glass-walled conference room, stumbling over technical terms I'd explained to him a dozen times. October 14th, the day before the presentation. The company-wide email went out. "Team, Tomorrow we'll be hosting representatives from Venture North for a critical funding meeting. Gavin Drayton will be presenting our new strategic initiative for market expansion. Please wish him luck. No mention of Nova Reach, no mention of me. But the real knife came later that afternoon. I was in the break room when I overheard Derek from sales talking to someone from HR. Yeah, Gavin told me Lauren's been struggling with her workload. Said he had to basically redo her entire project. Shame, really. She seemed promising. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the tile floor. As I knelt to clean up the pieces, my hands shaking with rage, clarity washed over me like ice water. He wasn't just stealing my work. He was poisoning my reputation to cover his tracks, making sure that even if I spoke up, I'd look like a bitter underperformer trying to claim credit for my boss's success. I spent that evening at home, staring at my laptop screen. On one tab, my resignation letter, half-written and abandoned like all the others. On another, the folder labeled documentation. 9 months of evidence that would mean nothing to HR, nothing to leadership. Just another woman complaining about not getting credit. How original. But there was a third tab open. A video file I'd been saving for, I didn't know what. Gavin at the holiday party. His tongue loosened by premium vodka, sharing his real thoughts about the company leadership. Gavin on a recorded Zoom call, forgetting his camera was on while he berated an intern until she cried. Gavin in the parking garage, on speakerphone, laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the analytics girl. I'd been collecting these moments like breadcrumbs, not sure what trail they were leading to. Now I knew. I opened PowerPoint and found the presentation file Gavin had shared with me for final review. He wanted me to check for typos, make sure the transitions were smooth. How thoughtful. I made one small addition, a hyperlink buried in the text of slide 14. Invisible unless you knew where to look. Unless you knew that Gavin always clicked on the title text to advance his animations. A quirk I'd observed in 100 meetings. The link led to a video file on the shared drive. A location Gavin had access to but never checked. 60 seconds of his greatest hits, edited with the precision of someone who'd spent 4 years watching him perform. As I saved the file and closed my laptop, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Control. Tomorrow, Gavin would stand in front of the people who mattered and deliver my work as his own. But this time, he'd also deliver something else. The truth. They say living well is the best revenge. But sometimes, the best revenge is just revenge, served at exactly the right temperature, with a garnish of poetic justice. The beauty of revenge lies in the details. Every great downfall needs an architect. And I approached Gavin's destruction like I approached everything else, with spreadsheets, timelines, and contingency plans. First, I needed to understand the presentation system. Trillathon used a standard setup, laptop connected to the main display. Presentations run from the shared drive to ensure version control. I knew this because I'd helped IT set up Gavin's new laptop 6 months ago when he'd spilled coffee on his old one. He'd been too important to wait for tech support, so naturally, the task fell to me. That's when I'd saved his login credentials, not maliciously, just habit. He'd never changed them. The video compilation took 3 weeks to perfect. I used basic editing software, nothing traceable to my personal devices. Each clip was carefully selected for maximum impact. Clip 1, 0. 15. The holiday party rant about Margaret Stern, our CEO. His words were slurred but clear, his contempt unmistakable. I'd recorded it on my phone from across the room. The video shaky but the audio crystal clear. Clip 2, 0, 15, 00, 28. A Zoom meeting where he thought he was muted. These fucking diversity initiatives are killing us. I've got to promote women who can't even. I'd screen recorded it when I noticed his mic was still live. Clip 3, 0.28, 0, 41. The parking garage call about the Venture North representatives. Those VC idiots will believe anything if you put it in a nice PowerPoint. His voice echoed off concrete, full of arrogant certainty. Clip 4, 0.41 00.153. My personal favorite, Gavin berating Maria from the cleaning staff for emptying his trash can while he was still at his desk. The language he used would make any HR department weep. Clip 5, 0.530060. The kill shot. Gavin on a client call, explicitly discussing how he was overcharging them for services. They'll never audit us. Too messy, too expensive. We could be billing them for unicorns, and they'd pay. Each clip was time-stamped, dated, and verifiable. I wasn't creating fiction, I was curating reality. The technical execution required precision. I studied PowerPoint's hyperlink function like I was diffusing a bomb. The link had to be invisible, had to work on the first click, had to seem like part of the natural flow. I embedded it in the title text of Slide 14, Future Outlook, knowing Gavin's presentation style. He always clicked the title to trigger his custom animations. A flourish he thought made him look tech-savvy. I tested it dozens of times on my personal laptop. Click. Video plays. Click. Video plays. No buffering, no delay, no opportunity for him to stop it once it started. The video would override the presentation, filling the entire screen. 60 seconds of career suicide in 4K resolution. But technology was only half the plan. I needed psychological insurance. I studied Gavin's calendar, noting his patterns. He always arrived 30 minutes early for big presentations to get in the zone. He'd review the slides one last time, practice his transitions, adjust his tie in the bathroom mirror. This routine was sacred to him, which meant he'd never think to check for sabotage. I also needed an alibi, though not in the legal sense. I scheduled a dentist appointment for the morning of October 15th. Paperwork filed with HR, confirmation email saved. I'd arrive at the office at 10:30, just in time to slip into the back of conference room A. Just another employee watching the big presentation. Nothing suspicious about that. The hardest part was the waiting. 3 days between uploading the modified presentation and the meeting. 3 days of watching Gavin strut around the office, already spending his future bonus. He stopped by my desk Monday afternoon, magnanimous in his stolen victory. "Lauren, I want you to know how much I appreciate your support on Nova Reach. When I'm running the Southeast Asian division, I'll make sure you're part of the team." I smiled, years of practice making it look genuine. "That's very kind, Gavin. I'm sure you'll do great things with the project." He actually patted me on the shoulder, like I was a golden retriever who'd successfully fetched a stick. Tuesday. I refined my resignation letter. Not bitter, not accusatory, just professional. I've accepted an opportunity that better aligns with my career goals. I'd already had 3 interviews with Meridian Technologies. They were eager for someone with insider knowledge of Trillathon's strategies. Funny how corporate espionage becomes competitive intelligence when you switch companies. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves, from anticipation. I lay in bed running through every possible outcome. Best case, Gavin's career ends. I move on clean. Worst case, they trace the video to me. I get fired, maybe sued. But I had my own insurance, a folder full of documented harassment, stolen work, and hostile workplace evidence, mutually assured destruction. Corporate style. Thursday morning, October 15th. I woke at 5 a.m., adrenaline already coursing. Dentist at 8:30, routine cleaning, x-rays for authenticity. The hygienist commented on how relaxed I seemed. "Most people hate coming here," she said. "Sometimes," I replied. "A little discomfort is worth it for a healthy future." By 10:15, I was in the Trillathon parking garage, touching up my lipstick in the rearview mirror. Not too much makeup. I wanted to look forgettable. Just another face in the crowd when the bomb went off. 10:25, I badged into the building. The security guard barely glanced up. 10:28, I grabbed coffee from the break room. My hands were perfectly steady. 10:30, I entered conference room A through the back door. The stage was set, the audience was assembled, and there was Gavin, clicking through his stolen slides one last time. oblivious to the fact that in 17 minutes, his carefully constructed image would shatter like my coffee mug on the break room floor. I opened my laptop, pulled up a blank document, and typed, "Meeting notes, Venture North presentation." Then I waited for the show to begin. 10:47 a.m. And now, Gavin announced with his signature pause, the one he thought made him look thoughtful. "Let me show you the future of Trillathon systems." His finger hovered over the mouse. In that fraction of a second, I saw my entire plan balanced on a knife's edge. One click, just one click between justice and just another Thursday. Click. The screen flickered, barely perceptible, like a blink. Then Gavin's face filled the display, red and sweating, a drink sloshing in his hand. "Margaret Stern is a fucking dinosaur who wouldn't know innovation if it bit her on her frozen ass." The words echoed in the conference room with the clarity of a bell toll. I watched Margaret Stern's face transform, confusion, recognition. Then something beyond anger, something Arctic. The video continued its relentless march. Gavin on screen, Gavin at the podium. Two versions of the same man separated by nothing but time and sobriety. These venture capital idiots will throw money at anything with AI in the pitch. Watch me milk these suckers dry. David Liu from Venture North set down his coffee cup with deliberate precision. The soft clink seemed deafening. His colleagues exchanged glances that spoke volumes about Trillathon's future funding prospects. Real-time Gavin stood frozen, his presenter remote hanging limp in his hand. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came. What could he say? The video was doing all the talking. "Yeah, I've got this analyst, Lauren something, does all the work, asks no questions. It's like having a Harvard MBA for the price of community college." A few heads turned in my direction. I kept my eyes on my laptop screen. Fingers poised over the keyboard like I was taking diligent notes. Inside, my heart was performing a symphony, but my expression remained carefully neutral. Just another shocked employee witnessing corporate disaster. The video hit its crescendo. Gavin screaming at Maria, the cleaning woman, calling her names that made even the most hardened executives flinch. Then the financial confession, admitting to systematic overcharging of clients. 58 seconds, 59, 60. The video ended. The PowerPoint didn't return. The screen stayed black, reflecting the room like a dark mirror. In it, I could see Gavin's career flatlining. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. "What the fuck?" Gavin started, his polished facade cracking like cheap paint. "Mr. Drayton." Margaret Stern's voice could have frozen hell. She stood slowly, deliberately, each movement radiating controlled fury. "Please remain exactly where you are." Gavin's face cycled through the stages of grief at unprecedented speed. Denial. "This isn't. Someone tampered with." Anger. "This is sabotage. Someone." Bargaining. "Margaret, please, I can explain." "Security is already on their way." Margaret continued, as if he hadn't spoken. She turned to the Venture North team. "Gentlemen, I apologize profusely for—" "No need." David Liu interrupted, gathering his materials with practiced efficiency. "We've seen enough. More than enough." The security team arrived at 10:49, 2 minutes that felt like hours. Gavin had moved past bargaining to desperation, clicking frantically at his laptop, trying to pull up the correct presentation. "It's here. The real presentation is here. Someone did this. Someone." His eyes swept the room wildly, looking for a culprit, a savior, anything. They landed on me. For one electric moment, our eyes met. I saw the question forming, the suspicion crystallizing. But what could he say? "I think the analyst whose work I stole sabotaged me." Even in his desperation, he must have realized how that would sound. I held his gaze for exactly 2 seconds, long enough to let him wonder, not long enough to confirm. Then I looked back at my screen, typed, "Meeting concluded at 10:49 a.m. due to technical difficulties," and saved the document. "Sir, you need to come with us," the lead security guard said, his hand hovering near Gavin's elbow without quite touching. "This is a mistake. Gavin said, but he was already moving, the fight draining out of him. A terrible mistake. As he passed my chair, he slowed for just a moment. I could smell his cologne. Tom Ford, the one he bragged cost $400 a bottle. Mixed with fear sweat, it smelled like defeat. It will need to examine all devices, Margaret announced to the room. No one is to leave until we understand what happened here. Perfect. Let them investigate. They'd find a hyperlink in a PowerPoint, leading to a video file uploaded from Gavin's own credentials. They'd find the video clips were all legitimate recordings, date-stamped and verified. They'd find exactly what I wanted them to find, the truth served digitally. I stayed in that conference room for 3 more hours, answering questions with wide-eyed innocence. No, I hadn't noticed anything unusual about Gavin's behavior. Yes, I'd helped with some research for the presentation. No, I didn't have access to modify the final files. The hyperlink was embedded using Mr. Drayton's login, the IT director eventually reported. The video file was uploaded from his account 2 days ago. Mystery solved, case closed, career cremated. By 2 p.m., I was back at my desk, officially cleared of any involvement. The office buzzed with gossip, but I kept my head down. The perfect picture of a shocked employee trying to process the morning's events. At 4:30, I submitted my resignation letter through the HR portal. 2 weeks' notice, as professional as everything else I'd done. After all, I had a reputation to maintain at my next job. As I walked to my car that evening, my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I know it was you. I deleted it without responding. Gavin could know whatever he wanted from the unemployment line. Knowledge without power is just impotent rage. The parking garage was quiet, peaceful even. I sat in my car for a moment, waiting to feel something: triumph, guilt, satisfaction, regret. Instead, I felt empty, clean. Like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for 9 months. I turned the key in the ignition and drove toward my future, leaving Gavin's ashes in the rearview mirror where they belonged. The aftermath unfolded with the predictable chaos of a corporate scandal. Within hours, Gavin Drayton became Trillathon's radioactive man. His key card was deactivated by noon. His parking spot reassigned by 2 p.m., his nameplate removed from his office door before the cleaning crew arrived that evening. I maintained my routine with surgical precision. Friday morning, I arrived at my usual time, bought my usual coffee, sat at my usual desk. When colleagues approached with whispered questions and theories, I offered only shocked shrugs and, "I can't believe it," murmurs. The perfect performance of a stunned bystander. The investigation moved swiftly. Its analysis confirmed what I already knew they'd find. The video had been uploaded using Gavin's credentials from his own laptop. The hyperlink was embedded during his final review session. Either Gavin had suffered the world's most specific psychotic break, or someone with access to his system had orchestrated his downfall. But who would have such access? Who would know his passwords? The beauty was in the impossibility of the accusation. Even if Gavin suspected me, what could he claim? That his long-suffering analyst, whose work he'd been stealing, had somehow gained access to his secure laptop and planted evidence of his own misconduct. The truth was more damning than any lie could be. By Monday, the full scope of Gavin's implosion became clear. The Venture North deal was dead. David Liu sent a terse email withdrawing their interest, citing cultural misalignment. The client Gavin had bragged about overcharging launched an immediate audit. 2 more former employees came forward with harassment complaints. Emboldened by his public disgrace, HR scheduled meetings with everyone in our department. When my turn came, I sat across from Patricia Wells, the Chief Human Resources Officer, and answered her questions with carefully calibrated honesty. "Did you ever feel uncomfortable working with Mr. Drayton?" "He could be demanding," I said, choosing my words like selecting knives. But I tried to stay focused on the work. "Did you ever notice any inappropriate behavior?" I preferred to keep our interactions professional. Truth wrapped in corporate speak. Patricia nodded, making notes. We're also investigating concerns about intellectual property theft. Several projects credited to Mr. Drayton appear to have originated from junior staff. Can you speak to that? I folded my hands in my lap, the picture of reluctant honesty. I always believed in supporting the team's success. If my research contributed to department wins, I was happy to help. She leaned forward slightly. Lauren, were your contributions properly acknowledged? The question hung between us like a trap. Too bitter, and I'd seem vindictive. Too generous, and I'd lose credibility. I learned a lot from the experience, I finally said, about how corporate dynamics work, about the importance of documentation, about knowing your worth. Patricia's expression suggested she heard what I wasn't saying. I see. Well, I want you to know that Trilithon values all its employees' contributions. If you've been undervalued, we want to make it right. But it was too late for retention efforts. My resignation letter was already in the system, counting down to my final day. The next week passed in a blur of transition meetings and knowledge transfer documents. I was scrupulously professional, creating detailed handoffs for all my projects, the ones credited to me and the ones that had been absorbed into Gavin's portfolio. Let them sort out the true authorship. On my last Thursday, Margaret Stern summoned me to her office. I'd only been there twice before, once for new employee orientation, once for a department-wide dressing down about budget overruns. This felt different. Sit, she said, gesturing to the leather chair across from her massive desk. I've reviewed your resignation, also your work history. I waited, saying nothing. In corporate warfare, silence is armor. The Nova Reach project, she continued, tapping a folder on her desk. I'd recovered earlier versions from the shared drive. Your digital fingerprints are all over the foundational work. I was glad to contribute to the team's success. I repeated my HR-approved line. Margaret's smile was sharp as winter. Cut the shit, Lauren. We both know what happened here. Maybe not the specifics of how that video ended up in the presentation, but the broader picture, crystal clear. My heart rate spiked, but I kept my expression neutral. Meridian Technologies, she said, changing tactics. Good company. They're lucky to have you. I'm sure you'll do very well there. How did she know I hadn't announced my new position to anyone? Corporate intelligence works both ways, she said, reading my confusion. Did you know they're planning to bid on the Hakimoto account, the same account Gavin was supposed to pitch next quarter? The implication was clear. Take your revenge and go. But remember, we're watching. I wish Trilithon all the best, I said, standing to leave. Lauren, Margaret called as I reached the door. For what it's worth, the video was illuminating. We needed to see who Gavin really was. However it came to light, I turned back, allowing myself the smallest smile. Sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing, even if it takes 60 seconds. Friday, my final day. I cleaned out my desk with the efficiency of someone who'd been preparing to leave for months. A few colleagues stopped by to wish me well, carefully avoiding any mention of recent events. Sarah from accounting hugged me and whispered, "About fucking time someone took him down." By 3 p.m., I was walking out of Trilithon Systems for the last time, cardboard box balanced on my hip. 4 years of my life reduced to personal items and stolen satisfaction. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Another unknown number. You destroyed everything. This time I typed back, "No, I just pressed play." Then I blocked the number, loaded my box into the trunk, and drove toward Meridian Technologies, where a corner office and a 40% salary increase waited, where my ideas would have my name on them, where I'd never have to document my existence to prove my worth. Revenge, I learned, isn't about destroying someone else. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. And sometimes, if you're very careful and very lucky, you can make them destroy themselves instead. 3 weeks later, I'm sitting in my corner office at Meridian Technologies, floor-to-ceiling windows framing downtown Raleigh like a conquered territory. The irony isn't lost on me that I can see the Trilithon building from here, 14 floors of steel and glass where I spent 4 years being systematically erased. The local tech blogs had a field day with Gavin's downfall. Senior executive ousted after shocking video incident. Trillathon Systems faces. Client exodus following leadership scandal. My personal favorite, how one click ended a career. A cautionary tale of corporate hubris. They never mentioned me. I was the ghost in the machine. The unnamed analyst who'd done the work and disappeared before the credits rolled, exactly as I'd planned. But here's what they don't tell you about revenge. The aftermath is quieter than you expect. I'd imagined feeling triumphant, vindicated, maybe even gleeful. Instead, I felt empty. Not hollow empty, but clean empty. Like a house after you've finally thrown out all the clutter you didn't realize was suffocating you. My therapist, yes, I finally filled that Xanax prescription and got professional help, calls it post-justice adjustment. Apparently, when you spend months planning someone's downfall, achieving it leaves a peculiar void. Who was I without that burning purpose? Turns out, I was someone pretty damn successful. At Meridian, my ideas weren't just heard, they were celebrated. My name went on presentations, patents, and profit-sharing bonuses. The Nova Reach strategy I developed? Meridian implemented a modified version and landed 3 major contracts in the first quarter. My corner office came with a view and a team of analysts who actually reported to me, but late at night. When the office is empty and the city lights blur together. I sometimes think about that morning, about the 60 seconds that changed everything. Was it justice or just revenge? Was there a difference? I got my answer last week when Sarah from Trillathon called over coffee. She told me about the aftermath I hadn't seen. 3 more women came forward after Gavin's termination, sharing stories of stolen work and systematic undermining. The board launched a comprehensive review of promotion practices. Patricia Wells implemented new protocols for crediting intellectual property. You didn't just take down Gavin, Sarah said, stirring her latte thoughtfully. You broke the system that created him. Maybe that's the real victory. Not the destruction of one man, but the exposure of a toxic culture that let him thrive. I never heard from Gavin again after blocking his number. LinkedIn showed he'd updated his status to consulting, corporate speak for unemployed. Last I heard, he was living in his ex-wife's pool house in Chapel Hill. Probably still wondering how his carefully constructed life imploded in 60 seconds. Do I feel guilty? No. Guilt implies I did something wrong. All I did was hold up a mirror. The fact that he couldn't stand his own reflection isn't my responsibility. But I did learn something valuable. Revenge isn't about the other person. It's about reclaiming your narrative. For months, Gavin had been writing my story, invisible assistant, community college intellect, forgettable Lauren something. The video wasn't just his downfall, it was my declaration of independence. You destroyed my life, he'd texted. Wrong. I gave him the tools and watched him destroy himself. There's a profound difference between pushing someone off a cliff and simply removing the ground they'd stolen from under your feet. The strangest part? I'm grateful to him. Without Gavin's theft, his gaslighting, his casual cruelty, I might have stayed at Trillathon forever, accepting crumbs of recognition, believing that was all I deserved. His betrayal forced me to see my own worth and to demand others see it too. My assistant knocks, reminding me about the 2 p.m. strategy meeting. I'm presenting a new market analysis to Meridian's board. My name is on every slide. My photo is in the company directory under Senior Strategic Director. My ideas remain my own. As I gather my materials, I catch sight of my reflection in the window. Professional blazer, confident posture, corner office backdrop. Not bad for a community college intellect. They say success is the best revenge, but they're wrong. Success is what comes after revenge, when you've cleared the debris and started building something new. When you've stopped letting others define your worth and started setting your own price. It took me 4 years to learn that lesson, but only 60 seconds to teach it. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat? But I won't need to, because now, Everyone knows exactly who I am and what I'm capable of. They know my name, my worth, and most importantly, they know not to test me. Some people learn from others' mistakes. The smart ones see Gavin's empty office and think twice before stealing credit. They watch the video because, yes, someone leaked it to YouTube and recognized the price of hubris. As for me, I'm done looking backward. Meridian has big plans, and I'm leading the charge. My ideas, my credit, my future. It took a year to build my reputation at Trillathon. It took 60 seconds to destroy Gavin's. But now I'm building something better. A career where I don't need to document my existence or record conversations or plan elaborate revenge. Because the best revenge isn't destroying those who wronged you. It's becoming someone they could never touch in the first place. And that transformation? That takes a lifetime. But it starts with a single click. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where are you listening to this right now? Drop a comment below and let me know what city or country you're tuning in from. I'd love to connect with fellow listeners who understand that sometimes justice wears a corporate blazer. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with a credit-stealing boss? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below.